I just got finished watching The Magic Washing Machine and Our Century's Greatest Injustice. And this is my video response. So The Magic Washing Machine I thought was pretty interesting just because it was kind of a different way to talk about the subjects that he talked about, but I really enjoyed it. But the things that kind of stuck out to me the most were he kind of gave statistics on poverty and the poverty line and people above and between rich and poverty, basically. So there's 2 billion people living on less than $2 a day, which I've heard before, but it's just really interesting to kind of hear that, being where I am from college, don't have a ton of money all the time, but how you kind of complain about that and how it's so much easier when you live with your parents, that kind of thing. But how much more I feel like I make less than most people, but how much more I still have than most of the people in the world. Um, and then there was 1 billion people on living on $80 a day, um, and how there was 7 million in between. But then he called the other line a wash line, which is people that had washing machines and people that didn't. So then there's 2 billion above the wash line. That means they made $40 a day, or more, or spent more than $40 a day, basically to $79 a day. And so then there was 5 billion um, in between the wash line and not quite to poverty, the poverty line yet. And then he talked about the energy that those people accumulate. And so, of course, the ones who made $80 a day had 6 units, and the wash line too, and kind of went down from there. But I was thinking it's really interesting about how the richest people are always the ones that accumulate the most energy, but how we're or they're the ones, or people like in the U.S., how we're obviously above the wash line, most of us, um, and how green we try to be, or how green everyone is trying to be, but yet we're always the one accumulating more energy than everyone else. Um, and so he was saying that we have to be more energy conscious and create more green energy in order to even out, because in 2050, if the economy continues to increase, hopefully, like they're hoping, um, people won't be below the poverty line anymore, or at least we'll have a significantly less people below the poverty line. So then obviously everyone will be creating more energy because of the more appliances and things that they have. So how we need to be a lot more energy conscious even that we are. And the thing that I thought was really, really interesting and I really liked is that he was saying, in speaking to a group of green people, he asked them, like, how many of you don't drive a car, and how few would raise their hands. But he's like, okay, but how many of you don't use a washing machine? And how nobody raised their hands, but yet they were talking about not everybody can drive a car, not everybody can have all the appliances, because then we'll create way too much energy and wastefulness, basically. And he's like, you cannot tell people lower than you what they can and can't do, because they don't have the luxuries that you have. He showed a couple pictures, one including of his grandmother who never used a washing machine until his mother basically saved up and got a washing machine. And he's like, are you going to tell this woman that she can't have a washing machine? And so I thought that was really cool, that you can't tell people below you how green they should be, because you're not in their living circumstance. And I think that kind of comes from just the judgment that sometimes people get by becoming like, well, I have that, but you don't, but you need to make sure you're green because we're going to make sure we're green, but we don't give up the things that they don't even have. So that was interesting. And one thing that I really liked at the end too is he talked about how once his mom got a washing machine, how she had much more time to read to him, so that he learned more things, he read more books, and how she learned English and read so many novels after she had time to do these things, which I just thought that was an interesting little kind of like quip at the end, just talking about how if the economy does continue to rise, and hopefully people will get equal chance to receive washing machines or other such things, that they can, that family life is better. Okay, and then the next one was Our Century's Greatest Injustice, which was a lot about women's education. And she gave several different circumstances about young women who weren't being educated or were taken out of their education at a young age, but then through some miracle, usually by some donation of somebody else, were able to go back to school, and how they did just amazing things. And I thought that was just so cool to hear about, because you never know what impact somebody can have, and a lot of these women really changed their whole villages or towns that they were in, and kind of reminded me again of how much we take advantage of um, the fact that we can have education, because I feel in a lot of families, especially here in America, that it's kind of wasn't a question for me whether or not I would go to college. I would, that was just the natural flow of things, and my parents expected me to go to college. I expected myself to go to college and gain this great education that I have access to. But how amazing that is that not everybody has that, but the amazing things that people can do once they're given the opportunity to do that. And she was talking about in our population, there are 60 to 100 million missing women inside of our population, which I mostly assume, comes from things like the China law of only having one child. So a lot of people wanted male to carry on the line, and just other things like that have contributed to that. But the fact that these women essentially don't even get the chance to kind of prove themselves. And that, so the phrase that she used is, more women were discriminated to death than all the wars in the 20th century, which of course is just an unfathomable amount of women that were discriminated against just because of their gender. And she also gave a statistic that in India, girls die at age 50% higher, at a 50% higher mortality rate than boys do, just because boys are given better nutrition, better education, better family life, even if they're coming from the same family, because they kind of see them as the breadwinners of the family and are able to provide more for their family than the girls do. So how that also contributes to education and how well they do in their life in general. Another thing she talked about that I thought was interesting was women's mortality rate. It said in some places 1 in 7 women can expect to die in childbirth. So I thought it was really interesting the word that she used, expect to die in childbirth, because you normally hear about how someone dies in childbirth, not the country statistics on that they should expect to die in childbirth, because that's just the lower level. And she was talking about, it's not that we don't have the medical advancements to better themselves or to better their situation, it's just they don't have access to it. So I thought that was really interesting, the whole video on Our Century's Greatest Injustice, just about discrimination against women a lot in their countries, which we don't really see a lot here in the US, which is a real blessing for us. But I thought both of them were very interesting, just about poverty and how much about women, and how much they really do for, and how much they can do for their countries and their cities, and how much more education that we should expect to give them.